Thanks for joining us. I'm Dale Minyo. It's time for our annual sit-down with Bill McDonald of Seed Consultants Incorporated. We're in the tent for their field day, but Mother Nature's not being very cooperative, so we'll do other things as we've had to do several times this year. Let's go back to the beginning for this year. First of all, how are you?
I'm good. A very interesting year with the weather pattern and the planting conditions and what we were seeing in the fields.
Now, if people remember last year and look back at the photo, you've lost a lot of weight since last year. Are we allowed to have secrets or give away trade secrets on how to do that? Because we all try at times.
The secret for me was 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, portion control, and 10,000 steps a day.
And how do you feel doing all that?
Oh, I feel a lot better. It's really nice to be able to reach down and tie my own shoe.
How long did it take you to get used to the idea of portion control? Because I do it, and then I forget it, and then I do it again, and it's kind of hard to get inconsistent.
The thing for me is just a mindset. You got to have the mindset that you want to take off some pounds, and if you have the proper mindset, it's always on your mind. You know, when you walk up to the table or you're sitting with a group and everybody's chowing down, you just think to yourself, hey, I love the taste of it, but I just eat a little bit of it, get the taste, and move on.
There you go. Get the taste and move on. So what did guys get the taste of this year when it comes to putting crops in the field? What do we need to remember to do next year, either because it really worked or because it was a disaster?
We had an interesting phenomenon this year, and it didn't show up till later in the season. We had some seed. Some went in good conditions, some went in wet conditions. But even if it seemed like a good condition, later in the season we started seeing a lot of bean fields yellowing up for some reason. There was no water laying there. Why is that field yellowing up? And it took some time and some effort. My first 2 calls was on a particular traded bean. I said, okay, it's this trait. And then the next 2 calls was another trait, and the next call was another trait. So I didn't see it with any one company. I didn't see it with any one trait. It was just a problem with beans in general this year. And I call it a phenomenon because we really didn't know what was causing it. There was lots of speculation as to what it was, but after doing a lot of research, at least Bill McDonald feels like he knows what that problem was. And it all relates back to compaction. We planted, even where we planted in good conditions, the seed came up, the seed looked all right, and after digging a lot of these plants, there was no taproot. We had lateral roots, no taproot. Well, why is that? Well, as the ground dried out a little more, I soon found out that we've got a compaction zone down there, and the taproot was going so far, stopping, and the lateral roots were taking over. So at any one point in time, if it would rain, our beans were laying there in saturated ground, dying, drowning, or a few days later when the rain was gone, the water was gone, we were just a few days away from a drought. And because of those conditions we were putting the beans in, number one, they weren't nodulating correctly. So as you know, if a bean doesn't nodulate correctly, you're gonna see the yellowing in the field, and that's what we were seeing. There were lots of things done to try to alleviate that problem. There were some people that put on urea or ammonium sulfate to get that nitrogen, but that was more of a band-aid. You know, if the beans can't put on nitrogen, then you know, they're not going to make their own, and they're not going to continue because it takes a lot of nitrogen. Now, interesting enough, in some situations we kept enough moisture that the taproot was able to work through and penetrate that compaction layer, and go on down, and those are the beans that you see out in the field look green and healthy. You go out and pull up those beans that don't look, and most of them you'll find don't have a taproot. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've been seeing this year out in the field.
How about planting dates, and particularly in corn? It seemed like we had everything from too wet, too dry, too much snow, too cold, and that was just in the first 2 weeks of April.
That's right. That April 28th period was probably the worst time. There was more replants for us as a company this year for that 26th, 27th, 28th day planting time frame. People that planted before that we were kind of shaking our heads at and saying, man, you might be starting a little bit too early. Those guys were genius this year. And the guys that started in a timely fashion in that late April time frame got hit pretty hard.
For the guys who saw the rain coming, or at least the potential of rain, because you never know for sure if the forecast is going to be right, and waited, what does their crop look like now if they ended up with an early May planting date as compared to maybe what they wanted to do?
The old rule of thumb, 48 hours. Stop planting 48 hours before a big rain event has really shown itself this year. Those guys that saw the rain coming, left the seed in the bag, are a lot happier, and we have a lot less replant situations. About every replant situation that we've had this year, you can relate it directly back to a planting day or 2 days. And, you know, with the seed treatments we've got anymore, seed will lay in the field for a long, long time. I mean, if 4 or 5 weeks is not unheard of, and the seed will come up and be fine. I don't like to keep beans under that long, because beans, you know, you get any kind of a stress on a bean, and it's gonna suck up the fungus that causes SDS, and so we want to try to stay away from stress situations. You know, a lot of people talk about cyst as being the main cause for SDS. Well, yes, it is a cause, but it's only one of the causes. I've seen enough imbibitional chilling in beans. I've seen enough cold stress, and when we can't get that bean up and going, and it's laying there in a stress condition, it's opening itself up for disease.
As you look to fields now, what should producers be taking mental notes, if not written notes, about what they did and how it turned out, so that they can make adjustments? Or does that really not start happening until they run the combine?
Well, my biggest concern is, like I alluded to earlier, is that compaction layer we've got out in the field, and it's not caused by farmers. It was caused by Mother Nature. Anymore, when we get a rain event, it just pukes on us and moves on. And rain is very heavy and causes compaction. When you take that in combination of the mild winters that we've been having, we had some cold weather last year, yeah. It got really cold, but when it did, we had a snow cover on. We never got any frost in the soil, and especially not down deep enough to break up that layer. And, you know, I'm going to go short of telling you to put steel in the field, but in most situations where I've seen that or cover crops, I don't see the issues that I see in the especially the vertical till and the no-till without cover crops.
What's your observations on farmers voluntary in areas that aren't being maybe as closely scrutinized when we talk about Lake Erie watershed or St. Mary's watershed and so on? What are you seeing and observing in regard to voluntary use with more cover crops?
Well, you know, I come from retail, so I used to hate cover crops. You know, we got to kill them. You know, we got to get a good stand. We got to control the insects. We got to control the slugs. With the exception of slugs, we're learning to manage all that. Farmers that are really good at cover crops are the experts. I've got customers that have been in cover crops for years, and they've built their soil profile. They've built the organic matter. They've got nice filtration of water through their systems. for those reasons, I really like the cover crops and the whole soil health aspect of it. It is definitely worth looking into if people would adapt to that and learn how to manage it on your farm.
What do you think when you look big picture? What's next? What will farmers either are they asking about, or what do you think they're going to be looking for next in order to continue to be efficient and produce what consumers here in the world need?
Well, it seems to me like farmers are as a whole, and as an industry as a whole, we're looking for the next trait, the next thing to control weeds. You know, we're learning and we're managing and a lot of other things, but we still have those people that plant a trait because if I plant the trait, I don't have to use a residual, and that is exactly what we don't want. You know, with the new E3 lineup, the Enlist soybeans, we got to have a good residual down to make that 2,4-D choline last longer. We don't want to lose that. You know, we tried that with the Roundup. We planted the crop. We sprayed Roundup on it. Weeds came. We sprayed more Roundup, and guess what it led to? We can all see that. Now, if our memory is good enough, we'll think about that no matter what trait platform we're using, and put residuals into our program. You know, in cases where you've got a water hemp or a palmer problem, you might have to layer your residuals. You might have to come back with another one because, to be honest with you, I don't know what the next trait is. And until we see that coming, we're going to have to manage the ones we've got more effectively.
As you look at corn and beans, any directional approaches you'd suggest farmers be aware of as they get ready for harvest? Anything concern you about standability of either one and so on?
The good thing is I'm not seeing as much disease this year as I have in past. When I see a lot of disease, I obviously worry about stalk integrity. I think we're going to have good stalks in our corn. I'm a little bit concerned about the root system on the beans, and if we get into some wetter situations, I'm worried about. You know, we never talk about this, but I'm a little bit worried about root lodging on beans. I mean, if we don't have a good enough root system to hold that bean upright, and we go into a wet fall, we could see some beans lodging over because of it. You know, like I said earlier, a lot of these beans, with the moisture we continue to have, that taproot's taken off again and anchoring that plant down into the ground. But we're going to have to look at the fields where we have these problems with the beans dying prematurely. It looks like SDS, but it's not in a lot of cases. And we may want to consider, you know, getting on those when they're ready. I mean, you know, take the header off of the combine and put the grain table on, and let's go get those beans.
Bill McDonald, my guest. They said, how long do you want to talk in the beginning? And I said, I want to talk till he's done telling his story. So we've accomplished that today at the Seed Consultants Field Day. My guest again, Bill McDonald from Seed Consultants. I'm Dale Minyo. Thanks for joining us.